Hey y'all, hi. All right, I'm back with another Duping the Vibes video, back with another banger. I'm really excited to be doing this today. It's always so fun when it's time to dupe the vibes again. This is the palette that I built last time, and I'll link the video in which I built this palette below this video. So if you want to know all about this one, you can click through and watch that one. Today, I'm going to be dismantling this one, putting the shadows back where they go, and building a new palette for myself that dupes the vibes of the Natasha Denona Glam palette and the Danessa Myricks Lightworks 3 palette. Now, those two palettes are really different from each other, so it's not like the palette is going to resemble both of them equally. It's going to be like if those two palettes had the perfect baby for me. So I'm going to take what I love and what I want from each of those two palettes and use the eyeshadows that I already own to create something that is probably, if past experience is any indication, better for me than either of those two pretty expensive new releases would have been. If this is your first time to my channel, then welcome. I'm so glad you're here. And this is the kind of thing I do a lot. So if you enjoy this content, I hope that you'll subscribe. My name is Hannah. I really love makeup and I love paying attention to what's new to the market. I'm often inspired by new releases, but I can't buy it all. So this is my solution. Let's go ahead now and get into the meat of the video. Okay, this little palette is all cleaned up now, but it's too small for what I have in mind today. I think I'm going to put it away empty and bring out the big guns, which is this big, beautiful square pan in this Tarte palette that I've had for a really long time. I shattered the mirror long ago. I covered it with duct tape so that the shards of glass wouldn't get into my eyeshadow. And then I've continued to use it. I can't get enough of this sturdy, deep, square pan. Clearly, it's not as nice as it was when it was brand new, but it's still perfectly functional. It has some sentimental value for me because it was a gift from my lovely friend Tara, and I just love it. I still love it. I probably love it more than I even did when it was brand new because it's been through so much with me. But I'm actually going to put it aside now and start gathering together shadows for the palette. And then once I've gathered together a group of shadows, I'll bring it back out and I'll start curating and editing as I put shadows into this palette. This is a really interesting Duping the Vibes challenge because these two palettes are so different. They're similar in a way, which is that both of them contain pans that can be used on the cheeks and pans that can be used on the eyes. And I'm not quite sure how I'm going to handle that, but maybe I should actually tackle that problem first. Here are all of my cheek products. I was saying in a video recently that I'm pretty overdue for a declutter of this collection, or if not a declutter, then some kind of separation, organization. I just feel a little bit overwhelmed by this part of my makeup collection right now. But I'm going to go through and see what's in here that I could maybe pop out of its case and put in a magnetic palette for a little while. Okay, I actually came up with more than I maybe expected, like off the top of my head. I couldn't remember all of these, but there are quite a number of possibilities from my cheek collection. I'm also going to go through my eyeshadows and see what's in there that looks like it could be a stand-in for one or more of these pans in the Danessa Myricks palette. The Danessa Myricks Lightworks palette has these 4 big pans in the middle that are, I think, like iridescent highlighting powders, which can either be used on the cheeks or all over the face or on the eyes. I'm sure that I have something like this among my eyeshadows. Okay, I know from this angle, these 3 square ones just basically look white in the pan, but all 3 of them are highly reflective in sort of an iridescent, almost fluorescent way. Yeah, you can see it there. So these 2 bigger pans, which are the ones that I swatched on either side, those are from Adept, and then this one in the middle is Cliona Glimmer. These definitely look like they could work for me in the way that those shadows from Lightworks would work. Even though they're eyeshadows, I could put them all over my face to the same effect. Wow, this definitely has that total sheer, like see how it completely disappears? From one angle you can't see it, and from the other angle it's gleaming with basically a blue reflect. This one too, and it's even more wet looking. That's the Cliona. And this one has a very, almost like a greenish yellow reflect. Any or all of these 3 could work, I feel. I love those post-swatch fingers. These are 2 eyeshadows from the JD Glow Galaxy collection. This pink one is Opal, and this one on the left is Good God. So there's Opal, and there's Good God. They have more pigment than those other eyeshadows, but I think that either of them can still work as a highlighter. In fact, I know that both of them can because I have put both of them all over my cheeks before. Again, you can see it's just a little bit more of like a layer of pigment, more coverage, but really this whole hand of 5 is giving me Lightworks. So let's keep these on the table for now. And let's look at these cream blushes. Okay, so this highlighter is probably the only cream highlighter that I have that's in a pan that could go in a magnetic palette. It's Salt New York Pearl. I feel like just for the sake of really duping the vibes of the Natasha Denona palette, I have to include this. I pulled out this Kjaer Weis bronzer because the pan is removable. I was just pulling all of my cream blushes that have removable pans, but this definitely isn't the color that I want, so I'm going to take it off of the table. I really love all 3 of these. This is Kjaer Weis Joyful, which is one of my favorite Kjaer Weis colors. And this is Blossoming, which they recently sent to me, and I've been using this nonstop. It's brand new, and I think it's really fresh, and the quality feels incredible. The pan is just really soft. It's very silky, smooth, extremely blendable. Whereas Joyful, which I bought from a brick and mortar store, and I think might have actually already been a little bit old when I bought it, it's always just felt a little bit more difficult to blend, been a little bit stickier, and it's just starting to get a little bit of that crayon smell. So this one might not actually be long for this world, but I have a renewed faith in this formula because of getting to test this fresh one. Both of these are incredibly beautiful, and both of them look like they could work, but I kind of want to dupe the vibes of the Natasha Denona Glam Face Palette in the shade Dark rather than the shade Light, especially for the cream blush, because even though the cream blush in the Light palette is lovely, I think it's actually probably the closest to this, which is Heliotrope from Rose Inc. Heliotrope has that kind of nude quality to it. It's just got a little bit of a softness rather than being quite pink. And the blush in the Natasha Denona Light palette has that as well. I think that probably of the 3 of these, I would include the Rose Inc blush if I were trying to dupe the vibes of Natasha Denona Light. But because I want smidge, But because I want dark palette vibes, I think probably this is going to be my best bet. Although this cream blush from Salt New York, smidge you're in my light, it actually swatches and applies as a much brighter color than it looks in the pan. No, this is it. This is what I want. This is perfect. These are the vibes. Because it has that kind of duskiness to it, you know? Okay, this takes care for sure of all of the cheek products. I'm not sure that I'll include them all, but I'm going to just put them to the side for now, go for eyeshadow, and then I may curate. I might edit this group when it comes time to put them in the palette. Let's start with the easy one. Let's start with the eyeshadows in the Natasha Denona Glam Face Palette. So I think that I do want 5. I think that I actually want like a little mini glam palette inside of this larger palette. And I'm going to mostly take inspiration from the dark palette, but I might just make it a little bit lighter than the dark palette. So in the pan, these looked at first glance like they might be kind of similar, maybe too similar, but they actually provide something pretty different from each other for me. I feel like this one has much more depth. That's this deeper one right here, the one in the round pan. This one has so much reflect and has a little bit of a copper quality, like a soft copper quality. I know even though they look quite similar, I just know from experience that I'm going to get a much lighter and brighter and more reflective look from this one and a duskier, more natural look from this one. So I think I'm going to include these two. I feel like they're sort of the more nude version, like more toned down version of the shimmers in either of these two palettes. Both of them lean kind of pink in the Natasha Denona Glam Face Palette. Both of the face palettes have a little bit of a pink edge to their eyeshadows, and this for me is just better than that. It's like that, but more neutral. I also clearly have 3 shimmers instead of 2. That works better for me as well. 2 mattes, 3 shimmers combination is much, much better than 3 mattes, 2 shimmers, which is what the Natasha Denona palettes have. I love this for me. This is so exciting. I feel like this is a little dupe. It's like a little updated dupe. It kind of is beyond vibe dupe for me, this right here, because I don't usually dupe something so exactly, so aggressively, like the same number, the same general impression, same everything. But I'm glad that I did it because I'm looking at the picture of the glam palette. Here, I'll put it up on the screen. I'm looking at the picture of the glam palette in dark, and I'm looking at this, and it looks very similar. You know what I mean? Like it's definitely giving me the vibes, but it's kind of going beyond giving me the vibes. It's giving me sort of twinning in a way. But I know that each one of these shadows is tried and true, and these cream cheeks. I just know from experience working with these actual pieces of makeup that I love all of them. If I didn't love them, I wouldn't have kept them in my collection. And my collection has gone through many rigorous declutters, so anything that's made it through is excellent. And that makes me more excited to work with these, to work with my version of the palette, than I think I would be to work with the brand new Natasha Denona palette, because it's also the colors, I've tailored the colors to suit me best. Okay, fun. Let's put this right here. Let's keep these in the picture just to remind ourselves what's going on there. And I'm going to now do the exact opposite of what I just did. What I just did was to go through my single eyeshadows and, well, it's the exact opposite in the world of going through my single eyeshadows. What I just did was that I went through my single eyeshadows and I tried to create the perfect neutral palette, like the most boring, but still the most perfect little 5-pan that I could. Now I'm going to go through looking for all of the crazy town shadows, all of the crazy textures, unusual textures, and I'm also going to seek out some colors that I don't usually use because those are all of the things that are in this Danessa Myricks palette. In the descriptions of the eyeshadows that are in this Danessa Myricks palette, everything is either opalescent or multichrome or holographic or duochrome. Everything is shifting. There's a lot of interesting texture and a lot of just shimmer and reflect and crazy stuff. So I am going to try to find things that evoke the palette, but I'm also just going to pull anything that seems to fit that description that's just seeming particularly compelling to me right now, because the point of this is to build a palette that's going to compel me in the way that this palette, this newly released palette, is compelling me. But to do that, I have the run of my entire collection. So I don't have to just stick with the color story from Lightworks 3. I can do whatever I want. Okay, this is my little Lightworks Volume 3 moment over here, and I ended up sticking more closely to the color story of Lightworks Volume 3 than I expected to. One of the things that kept me from following through with my impulse to purchase this palette is that it has a bunch of these aqua colors in it, like these teals, and I do love the potential for multichrome and duochrome with those kinds of colors, like how nuanced they can be, how exciting they can be when they're mixed and combined with other colors. But as you probably saw when I was opening and closing my palettes of singles, I have a bunch of shadows in this color. I'm really drawn to it, but then I don't end up really using them all that often. I use them sometimes, but not all that often. So that was a reason for me not to buy this palette, but I feel like it's also a reason for me to include these colors in my custom palette, because it's no skin off my nose if there are colors in the custom palette that I don't end up using that much because I already own them. And having them in here makes this really feel like I'm duping the vibes, like seriously, of Lightworks 3. I diverged a bit in that I brought all 4 of these pressed glitters out to play. There's only one pressed glitter in Lightworks 3, and it's one of these kind of like aqua green colors. None of these 5 is that color, and also there are some colors here that aren't really in Lightworks 3, like this reflective rose gold and this reflective copper. But I love having these pressed glitters in my custom palettes. I always get a ton of use out of them. I really, really like them, and I'm happy that they're here. I also didn't include much orange. There are these really like orangey yellow shifting shades in the Danessa Myricks palette. And these 2 Cleona shadows do kind of evoke that part of the palette. These are the multichromes Kiln and Forge, and they also have really beautiful sort of smooth, almost gel feeling texture. So they do add dynamic texture, and obviously they add really special finishes. So though I don't have like a really bright fuchsia pink and I don't have those soft oranges, I feel like the inclusion of these 2 just gives a little drop of that, gives like a sense of that to the color story that I have here. So I'm very pleased with this. And as I was pulling all of these shadows, I was getting more and more excited because they're so fun, some of my most fun eyeshadows. And then as I was putting them together, I was thinking, but wait, do I need to be practical? Should I add some mattes in here so that I can blend more easily? Should I think about what I'm going to want to use to bolster the looks that I do with this? And then I was like, well, no, I don't have to do that because they're going to go in the same palette as this basic B right here. And this will provide everything that I need to support the looks that I start creating with these eyeshadows. So it's working out swimmingly. I couldn't be more excited. I'm going to go ahead and start putting these away in the magnetic palette. I'm hoping that they all fit because I want it all. I want them all. Okay, I was able to fit all of these in sort of like an imitation of the structure of the palettes, right? So it's almost like a little Natasha Denona Glam Face palette up here, and then like a little Danessa Myricks Lightworks down here. But I think that I do want to put these in, and in order to do it, I'm going to have to put them in this space. I could move things around so that this space is more available. I think I might switch them, put the Glam on the bottom and Lightworks on top, and then Lightworks can kind of trickle down into Glam. Well, as it stands, this is one of my more chaotic efforts visually. I know that people are going to be worried about the powders getting into the creams. I'm just choosing not to worry about it. If it becomes an issue, then I'll just take these cream products out. I'll cross that bridge when I come to it. I know that some people also really struggle seeing the squares and the circles together. And usually I try to make sure that they're lined up in some way, so there's some semblance of order. But I couldn't quite get it done this time. This definitely doesn't have that sort of pleasing sense of chaos that these palettes often end up having. Instead, it's just chaotic. Like it looks just like I struggled to fit them all in, and I just did it in any way that I could. There's kind of like this awkward blank space here, angled pans here. But the thing is, even though looking at it now, it's not as satisfyingly symmetrical, or it doesn't kind of sing in that way that they sometimes do, the reality of using a palette like this is that I'm not looking at it most of the time, right? I'm going to close this and put it away in my drawer or with my other palettes. And I'm going to open it once a day for the next couple of weeks, because that's usually what I do when I build a palette like this. I just start using it constantly. Then I'm just going to be looking at the eyeshadows. I'm opening it as a tool, like with purpose. I'm going to open it to use it. And it's just not going to bother me that much in that moment. I'm going to open it and I'm going to be excited by all of the colors and textures. So I'm just going to let it stand. I would rather keep all of these shadows in here and have them all available when I use this palette than, kick some of them out so as to try to make it feel a little bit more composed. What I really want to do right now is get into the swatches. Okay, y'all, that is it. This was particularly fun for a couple of reasons. One is that these two palettes are so incredibly different. Like, this is obviously much more exciting. You know, I mean, this is what makes my heart double beat, but this is so much more practical, and it makes my heart double beat in its own way. The swatches altogether don't look particularly beautiful, but I loved the way that they looked on my fingers, and swatching this definitely did make me want to put it all over my eyes and my face. One thing is for absolute sure, I don't need to buy either of these palettes. And as it always does, going through this process, this exercise, has killed any last vestige of desire to buy either one of these palettes that I might have been harboring. I really feel like I have them. You know what I mean? Now in practice, every time I open this palette, it is going to give me an experience very similar to the experience that I would be having on a day-to-day basis if I had purchased both of those really tempting palettes and if I was using them in tandem. You know what I mean? If I had them both on my vanity and I was using them both every day. In spite of the fact that they're so opposite of each other, like the vibes of these two palettes are so opposite of each other, or maybe it's because they're so opposite of each other, in a funny way, they're the perfect complement to each other. And it's really exciting to have the vibes of each of these two palettes all together in one. If you've been tempted by either of these two palettes or by something else that's new to the makeup market right now, I hope that this video inspired you to look first at what you already have. For me, it's a tried and true method of sating those desires, especially when they're those really impulsive desires to buy stuff even when you already have it because the thing that you want to buy is the kind of thing that you really love. I've been curating my makeup collection for years now, and because of having done that, I find that most of the time when something's new and I really want it, I already have something quite like it. Sometimes it requires a little bit of dismantling and rearranging, but then when I get it together, when I get something before me like this, it's usually as exciting to me as the new thing, if not more exciting than the new thing could ever be. I really appreciate you for being here. Thank you so much for watching. And don't forget to take extra good care of yourself today so that you can be the most effective version of yourself as you do your work in the world.